touch, then I'm ready to go.
All right. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Santi Tricks, along with Dave, my co host. How are you, Dave?
I'm good, Santi. How are you?
Doing all right, man. Welcome. It's nice to have you. It's been a while since we record one of these, so it's good to be back.
Yeah,
It's been a few
we've both been
weeks.
kind of busy.
I guess, yeah, you could say that. Okay, so hey everyone, welcome to the Hollywood Dreams podcast. Today we got a really special guest. This is a New York City band that I always loved. They put out one hell of a record back in '88. I'm talking about Concrete Jungle. We got Mark, guitarist for Concrete Jungle. Hey Mark, how are you?
All right, Santi, how are you? How are you, Dave?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Awesome to have you on, man.
That's I really appreciate it. I mean, I can't believe 34 years after that album came out that people even still think about us. So it's a very grateful feeling, man.
Hey,
Yeah,
it's
man.
awesome to have loyal fans.
Yeah, man. That's it's. I mean,
Hopefully,
you
30
did.
years from now, people will be talking about the Hollywood Dreams podcast.
Nice.
Yeah, and in a good way, at least.
Maybe we'll still
not,
be going, man.
not like
Maybe
remember
Mark
that
will have
crap.
you on 30 years later. We'll see what you're doing another 30 years.
Yeah. Okay, so but before we dive into the whole '80s stuff, you got a sort of new band, right?
Right. Yeah. I started playing maybe 5 years after Concrete Jungle broke up. There was a lot of hard work that went into making that album, like 6 years with my brother Mike. A lot of people don't know that was my brother um, because we had different last names and stage names. And
I guess.
our best friend Chris and I, and then the latter 3 years before the album came out with JC. So after the band broke up, I got married and had kids, and then I started playing again. But yeah, 10 years ago, I found the drummer that I had been looking for my whole life to start my own band with, and we left the band and we were in, and we formed a band called Lionhearted, and it's we like to call it brutal funk. So
Oh, nice.
it has of course some Concrete Jungle roots in it. On our first album, we redid one of the songs from Wear and Tear with different lyrics, and I'm the lead singer and front man and bass player in the band now. So I'm having a good time.
Awesome. Is it a three-piece, four-piece?
Yeah, it's always been a three-piece. So
Three-piece?
the drummer Joe Diacqui, who's since left the band after the first three albums, he's in a band called Pierce now. They're very heavy, and he is technically amazing and uh, just power. And he's in a really heavy band now. They're called Pierced. If you want to check them out, they're really good as well. And Pete Pinheiro, who was on our first two albums and then moved to Florida, and he's in a band called Twisted Revolver down there. And so now I'm with my
Mm.
cousin Lou Corio on drums, and he's like the grooviest drummer I've ever known. Lucky to be in my family. And Rafael Rivera, who's played on guitar on our last album. So yeah, having a good time, man.
Awesome.
The
Awesome.
last
That's it.
the last member of Concrete Jungle is still playing.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned you put out a bunch of records, so I'm eager to check that out after we finish here.
Nice.
Do you guys do you play regularly, like live?
We were before the pandemic, and unfortunately, we live in cover band heaven
Yeah.
in North Jersey here, northern New Jersey, and it's very hard to get a gig to begin with. So we're looking at probably March next year. We'll start playing again. The last gig we did, we opened for Corey Glover of Living Color,
Oh,
which was
okay.
a dream come true for me because he's always been one of my favorite vocalists.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great singer. Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Um, Perfect. So, who's the main like creative behind the music for your? Are you the main composer?
We all write the music, and I write the lyrics and the
Hmm.
vocal lines. But
Oh,
yeah, it's a
nice.
collaborative. So everybody, and I don't physically write out music. So if somebody comes up with a great guitar part and or a
Hmm.
great drum part, and we build an idea around that, or a bass part, it's a musical collaboration. Everybody gets credit for it. So
That's great. Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome. Okay, yeah, definitely. We'll definitely check that out. If you got links for people to check out, please share those, and we'll put it in the description of the video and stuff. So yeah, we'll share it definitely.
thank
Yeah, well, also
Um,
I'll share it on my social media. I share everybody's stuff. Try to get it out there.
hmm.
Try to keep everything rolling. Keep you guys in
Yeah,
business.
thank you.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I was kind of spoiled by how Concrete Jungle just came out of nowhere and took off. Not that it, not that it, we did it like in a year, but
Yeah,
all the hard work and everything that led up to it, all of a sudden everything just started happening. And 10 years in this band, I know a lot of people still contact me about Concrete Jungle, but it's hard to get them interested in anything new. So
yeah.
I appreciate any support and spreading of the word you guys can give us.
Well, you'll definitely get it from us. So
Yeah, yeah. I always like I love sharing stuff from new bands or bands that are indie bands or some stuff like I think it's the best way to keep the rock and roll alive or the spirit of rock and roll alive. It's sharing the the stuff that's coming out and yeah, I think if you share our stuff as well, it's a way of going full circle.
yeah,
So
what I like about the whole thing
mm,
is like you go like say early to mid '90s. Everybody was scrambling, trying to figure out what style of music they want to do. What's awesome now is that anybody out there can just do whatever they want now. And all the yeah, I'm seeing doing the podcast and working with local musicians here in Cleveland. I'm realizing that a lot of the bands that were around back then are they're still all involved and everybody's still kind of doing something musically, and that's awesome to see. That's great to see everybody still kind of doing it and keeping that art going, and they're just it's awesome,
mm,
uh,
yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
yeah.
Yeah, and
So
there's like no boundaries now you guys can just do whatever you want to do, and
Yeah,
nobody's gonna say, oh well, you don't sound like Pearl Jam, or you don't sound like this. It's
exactly.
just like, yeah, it's like wide open now, and it's great, and we're getting a lot of great music out of it.
hmm, yeah, definitely.
The most
So
popular
speaking of
reaction I get to the band that I'm sorry, the most popular comment I get about the band that I'm in now is that you guys sound like a blend of Red Hot Chili Peppers and Living Color. And I'm like, well,
wow,
that's
well, that's a
pretty
great
amazing.
compliment.
That's
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, is
those are
there?
Yeah.
your influences. So yeah, that's cool.
That's great. So speaking about great music, how did the Concrete Jungle? How did that band get started?
So my brother Mike and Chris started it with another bass player, and it was called Sacrifice at the time because he didn't really sacrifice his time to practice and get better. So I was late to the party. Picked up my first bass when they had already started playing. Started playing with a couple other bands, and then I went away to college in Ohio, at Marietta, down on the southern tip of Ohio,
Yeah,
and
Marietta,
yeah,
Ohio. Yes.
that's right. And when I came back, they said, "Would you join the band?" And I said, "Okay, I'll leave the band that I was in," and I did. And we started writing music, but we didn't really have a front man. I was singing at the time, but we wanted somebody to be like not tied down to a mic. So the name Sacrifice stuck, and we got a singer named Adam Prince. His real last name was Paskowitz. Is Paskowitz. He's actually since after 3 years moved back to California, this is the kind of tangent that I'm going to go off on, and formed a band called the Flies in the early '90s. They had they had a hit song, but after 3 years, we got when he left, we got JC, and we started working on things then. But already in Sacrifice, we were probably the biggest band in New York at that time, or at least one of them. We were the house band at a club called Lemoore East in Queens, which wasn't far from us. We played
Mhm.
Lemoore in Brooklyn quite frequently because we were the house band, and at Lemoore East, we opened for whatever. We played every Thursday night, and then we opened for whatever national acts would come in on Fridays and Saturday nights. So we got the chance to open up for Robin Trower at Mountain, and it was really
Nice.
cool because a lot of bands, I like to call Lemoore East like those large, smaller venues, if you want to call it that. The sunset sunrise kind of club. Like the bands that are coming through there are either on their way up, or and they're in there trying to reestablish their position in the scene. And so it was great. And when we got JC, we had a lot of people who followed us at the time and came to see us, and they were like, "We lost Adam. You're not gonna," you
Mm.
know, they didn't really have much faith that we would rebound from that, but we did.
Yeah.
Uh, then we started playing mostly originals, um, and we started playing Manhattan a lot more often. And then when the album came out, we started trying to support it all around Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Delaware. We were doing pretty much the all around us in New York and on the East Coast, and we were doing well, but the album wasn't doing anything at all.
Mm.
And somebody told the guy who backed us, you should pack up all your albums and send them to the UK, because
Mm.
kind of at that point in '88, glam was starting its decline, and the hair metal was starting its decline, and grunge was starting to come around. And but they were like, but they'll eat up any kind of hard rock from America in England, so you should send it over there. And we did, and the album got an excellent review in Kerrang magazine,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it went on the charts and basically sold out. It was pretty amazing to be on the charts with bands like Rush and Guns N' Roses for a few weeks was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, talking about a dream come true, right?
Yeah, it happened really. It was like nothing was happening, nothing was happening, nothing was happening, and then all of a sudden, boom! It's just like, what's going on?
That's great.
Yeah. And so, was it a ICVM Records? Is that was that an indie? I mean, it was an indie label, right? But
Yeah,
was that created for you guys, or
yeah, it was
what
created
was?
for us. There was never another band on that label.
Mm.
It was
Oh
basically
wow.
the one album, and that was it.
And,
Yeah,
and you
our,
guys you
Much
guys
like an
worked with
ICVM missile, right?
you guys worked with Max Norman on that album?
yeah. So there are 12 tracks on the album. We recorded 8 of them at the end of 1987 in
Hmm.
Connecticut, and the guy who backed us flew Max Norman in from the UK to produce the album. But those were 8 of the tracks, and then we went back to a different studio called Fox here in New Jersey in early '88, and we did 4 more songs, and that was the best move that we ever made because. And Max wasn't involved in that, unfortunately. We had a great time with Max on the 8 songs, but the 4 songs that we did in Fox were the first 3 songs on the album, and then the last song, the cover of the Jerry Lee Lewis "Great Balls of Fire." But
Mm.
I really feel that if we had just released those 8 songs and not put "Right on the Line of Love," uh, How Can Love Just Fade Away and Nobody Moves on that album, that it wouldn't have been nearly as strong. So,
Well,
and
my favorite song is "Wear and Tear."
nice.
Yeah, I was just telling Dave before you joined that that song always comes like to my mind every now and then. Like I find myself singing it for some reason.
Got
It's
a
really,
great chorus to it.
that is really
It's like it's got that,
the, the lyrics for that song were actually written by the guy who backed the band,
Oh, okay.
oh wow.
our guitarist's uncle.
Nice, nice,
Yeah.
awesome. So what was the scene like in New York City? Because we host a lot of LA bands, but not enough East Coast bands. So what I would like to know what the other side of the country was like at that time, right? So what was the New York scene like back in the day?
It was pretty wild, to be honest with you. Um, at the clubs, it was great. My brother and I had actually flown out to California to see what the scene was like out there at the time, and we went to the Whiskey A Go Go and
Hmm.
all the clubs on the strip, and we were pretty amazed at how everybody was so totally into it. It was more of a theatrical vibe than it was in the New York scene.
Right.
Mhm.
Um, but it was more of a heavier vibe. Like you would see some people come to clubs with full out leather and chains. Um,
Right.
but uh, within the clubs, I mean, we didn't have like one spot where you could go to a bunch of clubs. They were all spread out, but with it inside the clubs, it was pretty wild. Pretty wild. Yeah,
And did
Lemoore,
you guys
those types of places, they were just packed, and the neighborhood that we lived in Queens was just like um, the most important thing to people in at that point was eating and going to rock shows. It was just like part of their life ingrained. So bunch of
now,
real
what,
big population of rockers where we were. So we were fortunate when it came to that.
yeah, were you guys playing like playing the Ritz and the Cat Club and places like that, CBGBs?
Ritz, Cat Club, CBGBs. Yeah, but we played there all the time, all the
Wow.
time.
And how different was it? Because everybody knows CBGB is like the history of the punk scene in the 70s. How different was it playing there in the late 80s and, going through that whole thing, thinking of the history behind that club, and here
Yeah,
you guys are,
we played the Cat Club like all the time,
uh,
and and it was just tons of fun. We played the Ritz once, and we played CBGBs a few times. So over that period of time, those weren't really our mainstay places, but um, the CBGBs was the scene of our last really important gig,
Hmm.
and that didn't go too well. So
oh
so
Oh
no,
no.
do we get a story or
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but I.
we had gotten a lot of interest from doing the one album. So
Hmm.
we went and we did a demo of four more songs, and we had three record labels show up to CBGB's that night. And because of it, the place was packed. And because we wanted it to be a showcase for record labels, we wanted to go on early because a lot of those people were coming right from work and maybe going out to dinner, catching a show, and then going home. But we were pushed back by the manager of the club to the last slot because he wanted to keep those people in the club and
Right.
drinking as long as possible. So by the time we went on, the A&R guys were gone. And looking back on it, it's one of the biggest regrets I have in my life because I should have just stood up and said, "Hey, listen, you tell him we don't go on at 9 o'clock or whenever it was we were supposed to. We're just going to get up and leave, and we'll take all these people with us." But we were young, naive. We
yeah.
were looking for somebody else to stand up for us, and that didn't happen. So
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that could have made a huge difference.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure you were crossing paths with bands like that were getting signed out in New York, like Danger Danger and Skid Row and those bands.
Oh yeah,
And seeing what they were doing, that had to have that. I'm sure that had an effect on you guys.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, we played with Skid Row and Danger Danger. We've been on the same bills with them.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
great seeing
and
we all knew each other. It was a lot of good camaraderie back then, you know,
Yeah.
so to speak.
yeah, some of the so yeah, by comparing like the LA bands, and you mentioned they were more theatrical. That's right. New York bands always tend to be more aggressive, like Skid Row or Spread Eagle, or well, Danger Danger will be the exception, I guess. But
Yeah, Danger
but that's
Danger were more.
but yeah, but I think your band was on that more heavier, like harder sound spectrum, right? No, not so much of the flashy. I mean, you had the looks, like the big hair and all that, but which I'm sure you're still rocking underneath that little beret that you have.
Oh, nice.
Hey, I'm not the only one. Finally, somebody else on the show has the head like mine.
Yeah, yeah, not like that. Not like
Oh,
Oh man.
nice.
Hey, you got any extras of those that you want to sell?
that. Sure, I give you
Are
one.
you serious? All right, yeah. We'll talk when we're done. We'll talk.
Yeah,
Nice.
definitely.
I'd like to order
We'll
one from you.
negotiate.
I
Yeah,
need to have that in
definitely.
my collection.
I was telling Jake that this local record store near my place has a cassette copy of the Wear and Tear album. I don't even ask for the price because he has it like in exhibition, and I know that's a telltale sign that it is at least $100.
Oh my God, I
Oh,
still can't believe it. I mean, people find me all the time, and I want to say 15 years ago, someone from the Ukraine somehow emailed me, and that shocks me even more than when people find me like on social media nowadays, because back then you had to do some like investigative work. That, my
Right?
name
Yeah.
was not on that album, my real name, and somebody found me from Ukraine
Oh wow.
and emailed me and said, "Are you the Mark David from Concrete Jungle?" And I was like, "What is this?" And we became friends. And then he was the one, actually, one day he told me, he said, "Go on eBay. One of your CDs is currently up to $430 on bidding." I'm like,
Oh wow.
"What?" Kidding me? And it was. I watched it go for like $437 or something. It was right at the end of the auction. Mind-boggling.
you ever,
Mind-boggling.
Yeah.
you ever stop and go, man, if only you guys would have paid this kind of money for it back then.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally different life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a combination of the album never been reissued, as it has, and it also been a limited edition run with an indie label. I think it's like the amalgamation of all the things that would make a cult classic, right? The scarcity of it. Have you ever been reached out by any of these new labels like Rock Candy Records or all those labels that are re-releasing albums from back in the day?
Yeah, I have, but unfortunately, I don't have the rights
Mm.
to that music. Our backer started his own publishing company, so even though we had the writing, the copyrights for the songs, we weren't we don't have the publishing rights or the rights to release it. So that would be up to somebody else, and
Mm.
not me, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I'm guessing there's some unreleased stuff, right, as well.
Yeah, there was. I mean, wasn't as professionally done or polished as that album was. I mean, Max Norman was extremely thorough. I have to tell you
Mm.
that meeting him um, was one of the joys of my life that I will never forget. And we actually did pre-production before that with a guy named Roger Probert, who was from the UK as well. and he helped us get Max. And but that whole experience, I harken back to that, and I tell people that that is the one time in my life where I really felt like I was a rock star. You know,
Hmm.
we all had full time jobs, and we played. Santi and Dave, we played insane amount of gigs every week while holding down full time jobs. You know, I look at the
Wow.
heads that I have in my scrapbooks, and I'm like, holy cow! This month we played 18 times, and we
Wow.
were all over the place, and we all made it back to work and did what we had to do to pay our bills. And but that time, we all took a week off from work, and we were at Carriage House Studios in Connecticut with Max Norman and Roger, and I mean, we recorded whenever we wanted
Mhm.
during the day, woke up whenever we wanted, stayed up as late as we wanted, you know, and just like the amount of things that he had us doing, the layers to the music. And I remember sitting up upstairs because the carriage house was actually a converted carriage house for horses that they made into the studio. So the studio was on the bottom, and the living quarters were on top. So I mean, we would hear through the floorboards Chris just doing squeals on his guitar, you know, just like squealing bends like meow, just little layers that Max Norman had us doing. So it was just an amazing time. And then I would say the second most amazing time was when we played a place called the Brick and Wood in Connecticut. And during the day, we had an album signing at a local record store that went pretty much the way the album signing in Spinal Tap went. And have you seen that? Like where nobody shows up, and we were all like, joking around, quoting the movie. And so,
But we shouldn't have an all black album cover.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we went from there to a gig that night, and there was an opening act, and I remember the place was starting to fill up, and I'm like, oh, this could be a cool night. And then we hit the stage. By the time we hit the stage, the place was packed, and I'm like, oh, this is a great crowd, and it looked like a bunch of rockers. This is going to be nice. And we started playing, and right across the front of the stage, there were people who were like pumping their fists at us. And for the first time, I could see that they knew the words to the songs because they
Oh,
would sing
nice.
along with them. And I got to tell you, that is something I will never forget ever. It's etched my photo memory of that whole looking down and seeing people doing this and singing along with the music. I mean, the
Did
one
you
of the
get
most amazing
chills or did you
times of my life.
just get more energy?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You had to get
I
serious
bet you.
goosebumps from that, I bet.
Oh, it was amazing, amazing.
Wow. That'd be great. That's then, especially when you're looking out there and and that's when you realize that people are listening, and that's got to be a great feeling.
It is. It is. I mean, it's not like we got any radio airplay at that time, so
Hmm.
it was all
No,
word of mouth and people
yeah,
sharing.
exactly. That means they're physically going out there and they're physically doing it on their own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me that means I don't know. I feel like that would mean more to me if if people were going out of their way to kind of find you, and without any kind of backing from MTV or radio. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I said to the guys in the band while we were making the album, I said, this is going to be a really, really good album. And my dream is like to be walking down the street and have somebody drive by with their car stereo blasting one of our tunes. So to me, like that moment was that was exactly on the same level as what I was hoping we would achieve.
Yeah.
So did you ever play Cleveland?
No, we did not get up that far or that far north.
And that would have been awesome. I probably would have been there. I probably
Nice.
would have been there. I
But
mean,
you
I was going
know
to
about
so
us
many
when
shows
the
back
album
then.
came.
What's that?
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, what did you say? I didn't hear what you said.
I said, did you know about us at the time when the album came out?
Uh, we did. We had a spot here called Shattered Records, and Frank, the owner, would get all the underground bands and all these bands that were on independent labels. And I would go in, and Frank would be like, he'd give me like a handful of bands to listen to. And yeah, you guys were on that list. You guys
Nice.
were on that list. And I thought, did you guys have a song on like a compilation?
Not that I
You
know of.
remember? Because he used to give me those too, where he would give me these compilation cassettes, and they'd have like a bunch of different artists from whatever studio or whatever. It would just be, and that's how I would learn about new bands. And then I was really into that. I was working at a pizza place at the time. I was like 15 years old,
Hmm.
washing dishes, and I'd get my paycheck. I'd take it home. My mom would cash it, then I would go and hit Shattered, and I would just buy tapes, whatever, of any band. Oh, these guys look cool. So, I mean, that was how I did it, and and here we are, 30 plus years later, and I still love it. And except I buy more expensive things that involve the bands, and especially with vinyl now, everything's so. But I'm catching up on that whole vinyl thing. So,
Yeah,
um,
we are both vinyl collectors. So
I hear that. To me, the album sounds so much better on vinyl than
definitely, yeah.
it sounds great on cassette as well, but it definitely lost something in the CD at the time,
Hmm.
especially when
Yeah.
CD was like a newer format at the time than it is now. But
I was
yeah,
never a big CD.
so
I was never a big CD collector. I was always buying tapes, and then for a while there, I was just doing digital, where I would just get everything. And to me, that it really loses something on like a streaming service. And then when vinyl started getting this, revival, my buddy was always collecting albums, and we would just sit around. And he'd be playing records. I'd be like, man, this sounds really good. And then
Hmm.
I started collecting. So now it's fun. Now I'm back to buying physical media, and I couldn't be happier about it. It's just I just wish that more of the genre that I love was more readily available, but it's not. I mean, you really got to hunt
Yeah.
this down. But you do, man. It's like nothing else. And I put on an like say Babylon AD, for instance. I put that album on, and one of my favorite records, and I from cassette back then, and I found the vinyl, man, and I put that thing on, and it was like listening to it again for the first time. And that's what I like. That's what I'm really getting. That's my pleasure out of the music now, and getting that physical media back. It's awesome.
yeah, when I finally started playing again, and the drummer in the band I'm in now, currently, our drummer is my cousin Lou, and he was the one who talked me into starting to play again after Concrete Jungle broke up, and we
Hmm.
had those years where I wasn't playing except you know futzing around in the house with my bass, figuring out a bass line that I'd heard that I liked. He was
Yeah.
like, no, I have a band. You should start playing. So he got me back into it. So it's cool how that all came full circle. Like he got me back into playing. I played with a bunch of bands and other drummers, and then now he's back with me again. But the second band that I played with after that was a band called Maybe Pete, and much different than any kind of the other stuff I'd done. But more like a roots type of band, um, like kind of a roots punk type of uh, conglomeration. And
Okay.
so when we went to record our first album, we went to a studio and we sat there and they said we could do your album either in digital or we could do it analog on reel. And I said we could do it analog. Let's do that. Especially
Hmm.
being a bass player. I don't want to, but bass players, you want analog. That's where I feel the most drop off is in the warmth of the bass with digital. And so we're sitting there and they're playing us a bunch of tracks that they recorded, and they said, well, I'll play you tracks of both. I'll play you some digital and I'll play you some analog, and you guys could determine what you want. And I would sit there and he wouldn't tell us what it was, and I would just go, this is digital. And our guitarist would say, what is this? It's digital. And then the next guy, this one's analog. I don't hear the difference, Mark. I'm like, I hear the difference. Which one is this? It's analog. I'm like, see,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that really does make a difference.
it does.
Mm, yeah. So yeah, I mean, and well, it's a shame really that you guys haven't come around to releasing the album again. Maybe a second vinyl run would be really cool. Something like that with the extra bonus tracks, stuff like that. Or the unreleased stuff that you guys had as well. That would be awesome to hear. I myself, I'm much younger than you guys, so I wasn't around to hear it back in the day. I'm
What does
30.
that mean, man?
Uh,
What does that mean?
I'm just making a point that the way that I came to Concrete Jungle is by just hearing it over the internet, right? And not only the age factor, but also the fact that I'm like 10,000 miles away. But, but yeah. And it was always a band that stood out to me from the like menagerie of bands that you find over the internet because I don't know, it's well, of course, the music on one hand, and also the album cover. I always like it, not only because of the pretty lady that's on it,
What did you like
uh,
about it exactly?
no, I'm definitely not that. Yeah, we don't want to get canceled before we even start to get famous. So,
I had
so
that album cover up in the office where I worked,
yeah.
uh, on the wall framed, and I had it there for a long time. And one of the a woman came in and from HR, and she was like, "You really shouldn't have that hanging up on." And just to give you an idea of how I was at that age, instead of taking it down, I just put a sticker that said "censored," like right over her panties. Many
That's
years ago.
awesome.
Many years ago.
Yeah.
I'll give you an interesting. First of all, this woman is the wife was the wife of the photographer.
Oh.
He had the concept of having us shoot. This is actually shot in New Jersey with the New York City skyline behind us. And then she was shot separately and superimposed over it.
Oh, really? Oh.
The Empire State Building was really somewhere over here, but then he took it and put it right there for a subliminal effect.
You don't
And
say.
then my brother, our drummer Mike, did that logo. So
Nice. Yeah, I always
Very
like that album cover.
we
Nice.
knew that we had gotten a lot of people who bought the album just for the cover.
Well, I mean, it served the purpose it was made for. So.
now, now, getting away from that album cover just for a second. Did you guys take was Bob Marley an influence at all for the whole thing?
We okay, so the guy was back in the band. When we decided we weren't going to go with Sacrifice anymore, and we found out there was a Canadian band at the time, or much earlier, that had made a name for themselves with that. The guy who was backing the band gave us three choices. They were all movies. One of them was Electroglide in Blue, which I think had Steve McQueen in it. Concrete Jungle, and the other one was the Bushwhackers. Like the Bushwhackers.
Really? No, that was the Final Cat moment at all to go with that name.
The
so,
Bushwhackers.
so because we were from New York City, we chose Concrete Jungle, but it was because of that of the movie, not because of
The movie,
Bob
not
Marley's
because of Bob
songs.
Marley. Okay, okay. I was curious because I do enjoy Bob Marley every now and then. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. So do I.
I was just curious on that. But thank you for clarifying, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
thank you for not going with the Bushwhackers.
you just settle a 30-year-old doubt now that they've had
You know,
here.
I've had it killing me since I've been 15 years old. Well, probably back then, I probably didn't care or know who Bob Marley was. I was so
Yeah,
focused
to be
on,
honest
oh,
with you, I love Bob Marley now, but yeah, at that point, no.
yeah,
My brother
that's
and I were raised on jazz. My
mm,
father was a jazz musician. He's still alive, but he doesn't play. Um, but he had a 26-piece rock jazz orchestra. I got to tell you, totally kicked ass, and that was my brother and I our inspiration to start playing. So we were heavily raised on jazz. Our Chris was um, the rocker. He loved the Who. We had many an argument about which band was better than or not when it came to the Who, and so we started getting into rock because of him. And then he got into the heavier stuff. And when Mob Rules came out, he was totally into Black Sabbath, totally, and he got us into that. And like I said, Sacrifice was mainly a cover band. So when we started playing out in the clubs, we were playing mostly covers. And we started slowly filtering our own music into that. So we were doing a lot of Sabbath, a lot of Aerosmith, a lot of Van Halen, um, a lot of Who, you know. So
hmm,
yeah, reggae was not something on our radar at that time.
Right.
So
I bet you. Yeah. So
yeah.
did you guys ever consider relocating to California back in the 80s?
no, never did, never did. It's beautiful. I love it. I keep telling my wife that we're gonna retire somehow in San Diego. San Diego is gorgeous, but yeah, no, it's great. It was a great scene out there at the time.
Yeah. Well, and I always wanted to ask, so because people always say how the LA scene died overnight, like suddenly everyone's stopped caring about hard rock or glam metal or stuff like that. I'm curious if the New York scene was like that, given that it was heavier already and much more grittier than the LA scene, not so flashy. What was it? Was it like a monumental change in that same way, or was it more progressive or not so? How was it basically?
I would say in Manhattan,
Mm-hmm.
it pretty much mirrored California in that way. A lot of the clubs that were doing hard rock, all of a sudden less people were coming. But in Queens and Brooklyn, the outer boroughs, it was still, rock hung on for a long time after that,
Mm.
where changed to grunge and alternative and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah. So we were fortunate that way too.
yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
I feel like New York would probably be more diverse musically than LA,
Yeah,
just because just the art part of it and everything, where
yeah,
LA didn't really have like the art. You know what I mean? Like New York was very artsy.
yeah, exactly. Because so what we noticed at the end, after the 90 91, was the joke with us was that we were playing mixed bags a lot. Like before that, there was just so many hard rock bands and glam bands and metal bands, and the popularity of the music they were covering, a lot of the bands that we played with were partial cover bands as well. But once that all changed, New York started changing. There just weren't enough, really popular bands to fill a bill for a whole night at a club. So
Right.
we would joke around like, we were playing with a band that was playing Ramon style music, and then another band playing like Talking Head style music, and then us. And it was nice. It was nice to have all those different
Hmm.
influences and everything going on, but
Yeah.
it felt strange as well because we were used to playing with, another band or two that were
Similar. Yeah.
paying we were. So
Hmm.
like another mixed bag tonight.
You know,
Yeah, and I always hear how well. I mean, it's you can see it, right? But I always hear people telling how New York changed over the years, and it got clean, and it's a whole different city now. And Michael Monroe wrote a song about it. It. How was it from a musician perspective? Nowadays, is there a lot of places to play, or is it just all so clean and structured that you can't find any cool hangouts like back in the day or stuff like that?
Yeah, it's harder. It's harder to find more clubs that are welcoming to local bands and
Mm.
original bands. Like I said, you see tribute bands all the time, even in some of the bigger clubs. Like there's a club in New Jersey here called Wellmont Theater, and you'll see 2 or 3 nights a week they'll have, sometimes they'll have tribute bands, you know, Black
Yeah.
Dog doing the music of Led Zeppelin. So,
Mm.
for example, it's like, wow, it's really so much harder to break in as an original band
Yeah.
nowadays.
I'm not a fan of tribute. I get cover bands. I'm not a fan of tribute bands. I think there's some schizophrenic side to it. I'm not sure I can I like, but
We got a lot of them here in Cleveland and Ohio.
well,
So we got
you
a
got
lot
a
of
lot
them.
of them here as well. There's the other night there was this Bon Jovi tribute band. The guy even dresses like him, has the same hair. I don't know. I'm kind weird. I'm creeped out by it. but what I was
In
trying
that
to
regard, I think it's better to have like a mixed bag when it
yeah.
comes to what you're doing. If you're going to do covers, to do them different because there's no other choice but to have your own influence, create a different
Yeah,
sound, and
I mean, whatever
when we do
helps.
covers, we try not to do an exact version of what somebody's doing, even though
I mean, whatever helps pay the bills, I'm
version's
all
great.
up for it. And I understand playing in a tribute band or a cover band because you gotta feed yourself and your family. I think that's totally understandable and fine. But from an artistic perspective, or I don't know, I would love to see more original bands coming out. I know it's hard because no one cares enough to pay for an original band, or people don't go to the shows. I know it's a weird scene right now. It's the same over here as well. I mean, we used to have a lot of original bands, and nowadays it's all cover bands, tribute bands, or maybe like you have like a club hosts a party with a and you have the club band playing like covers during that party and stuff like that, but you just don't have enough originals. I don't know. I'm all for new bands coming up, and and that's why I love hearing that you have this new band that and you're playing and releasing albums and playing originals, because I think that's the that's the heart of the rock and roll scene, having new stuff coming out.
You got to keep pushing it. Got to keep
Yeah.
pushing.
I keep
And
pushing.
there was the one band I thought out of New York City that was going to change the scene way before Seattle happened was Warrior Soul.
Mm.
I thought Warrior Soul were like they were kind of in there with the hair bands, but they were also kind of in there with the punk bands and the heavier bands, and they had a total like just a unique like just a style that was so unique on those first few albums. I thought that band was really going to push the scene into a different direction. And that was, we're talking late 80s, early 90s with that stuff. And kind of like what Guns N' Roses did in LA for a lot of the bands on the strip. Like their style got a little heavier, it was a little more edgier, their look was a little different. Um, yeah, so I really thought that would have been one New York band that was going to change things. And
Never
I
heard of
see
them.
one of those guys. What's
Yeah,
that?
I never heard of them.
Oh, you never heard of Warrior Soul?
No.
Oh man, check it out. Check out the first couple albums. Santi,
Mm.
you helped me out with them. Do you remember? Was it
I
last
think
century, last
I,
decade, that century, or was the
I think
first one?
no, the first one I think is just called Warrior Soul, and
No, they don't. No, it was last century, or
yeah,
last decade,
they
dead century, and then
yeah they
Drugs
had
Got in the New Republic,
mhm.
and then Salutations
Salutations from
from
the
the
Gay
Ghetto Nation.
Donation. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, those
yeah.
were the first
Uh,
three albums.
All right.
If you want,
mm.
yeah, I because there's some poetry in there. There's Corey Clark was the singer. I mean, just a great New York band, and they were a little, like I said, a little edgier.
I
You
will
might
check.
actually, yeah, you might dig that stuff. You might go back and I'm surprised you didn't hear of them.
Yeah,
That's
Hmm.
surprising
yeah, me
because
too.
they really pushed the whole New York thing. And you know, it was just very, it was just such a different vibe. And you know, like I said, they kind of get thrown into that category, but they really weren't. They were kind of on the fringe. They were kind of doing their own thing.
Yeah,
Really good band. Really good band.
yeah. Well,
Mhm.
you were talking before about um, how New York has been cleaned up, Sandy, since the
Yeah.
'80s. I mean, it was a real vibe, and we were reflective of that vibe at that time, you know. But
Hmm.
now I like to refer to New York City as Disney World Northeast.
Yeah, it pretty much. Yeah, I mean, I've been a lot of times. Last time, in 2019, I think before the pandemic, and it's a city that I love. I grew. First time I went there was in '98, and I was just what 6 years old. Um, so I don't know. It was. I've never experienced the city in the same way as you got. I mean, it was always the cleaned up version. I mean, for me. So, but yeah, it's a city that I love. It's a crazy city. It's very similar to Buenos Aires in a lot of ways. In like this big skyscrapers full city. Um, so it's very similar to where I live. Uh, but yeah, I totally get that it has a vibe on itself. Having visited other cities in the U.S., it's no, there's no. Yeah, I think New York is in an exception. I think it's very different to the rest of the
Yeah,
United States.
I remember going to Chicago for the first time and driving through Chicago
Yeah.
and and then getting through it so quickly. And and having known about it at the time as the quote unquote second city,
Yeah.
it's like this is I mean it's nice, but this is small. This is like not New York, you know.
Yeah. Have you ever been to Argentina or South America?
No, I have not.
Well, now you have a next destination. I'll buy you a beer or two.
What a deal. What a deal.
So, um, in we always like to wrap up the episodes listing our top three favorite albums. So I don't know if you're ready for it, but I'm gonna put you in the spotlight and ask
Nice.
you what are your influence. It doesn't have to be an album; it can be a band, if you. But yeah, what are your big top three influences? Maybe that's a better way of phrasing it.
Okay. I'll give you some. There are a lot. I'll give you my hard rock choices.
Okay.
Okay. You guys familiar with Return of Crystal Karma by Glenn Hughes?
Well, not that particular album, but
I
of
don't
course
have
I'm
you.
familiar with it. Yeah.
That is
Okay.
one of my
Nice.
favorite all time. Slide It In by Whitesnake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah. Nice album. Yeah.
To me,
Which mix? Gotta
which mix? There are different
go
mixes.
John Sykes, right?
Oh hell yeah, hell yeah.
Hmm.
And Neil Murray and Cozy Powell. My God, Cozy Powell was a monster.
It's an
But
amazing. Yeah.
the lyrics on that album are what prevented that album from being like top of the charts because the music was just incredible, but the lyrics were just too racy. Uh,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
and I would
Well,
say,
there's a funny story there here. So back in the '80s here in Argentina, the album names would be translated for like on the liner notes and stuff like that. So "Slide It In" was translated well, yeah, it was changed to "penetrate." So it was even more on the nose.
That's awesome.
nice.
It was named Sliding and Penetrate. So I don't know. I don't know why. They didn't want any doubts to be any confusion to be, to be. Yeah.
And the
Uh,
third album would definitely be Vivid by Living Color.
oh yeah, that's a great and it was so different at the time, right?
Yeah, that was
So
another one that I
uh,
thought could have changed a lot. That was another one that was kind of on the fringe of something different and something bigger. And great
Yeah,
album. Yeah, great
mhm,
album.
unbelievable, unbelievable. Love the mix.
yeah.
Love the
Yeah.
sing. All the individual instrumentation is just phenomenal. And yeah,
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think Jordan Reed gets enough credit as a guitar player.
yeah, no,
He
he's
really does.
amazing. I saw them right after we opened up for Corey Glover um, back in September of 2019. We went to a church in Princeton, New Jersey, where they were doing a fundraiser for gun violence awareness,
Hmm.
and and a phenomenal show in a church. And I got to hang out with all of them after the gig because I met Corey from opening for them, and what a great bunch of guys. And Vernon Reed is he's just incredible. He
Yeah,
really is.
amazing.
Yeah, and such a joy to hang out with. Yeah, we were talking about the whole purpose of that was to bring awareness to gun violence, and during the show they had like a whiteboard on a stand off to the side of the stage, and somebody just kept updating it with
Mhm.
how many people were getting shot in America during that particular moment in the show.
Wow.
And afterwards, I was talking to him, and I said, "It's really great that you're doing this. My band, we would love to get involved with it if there's any way we can." And
Mm.
because it's kind of weird when you think about it. If romaine lettuce sickens like 12 people in one state, then all of a sudden they pull all the romaine lettuce off the shelves, and because somebody got sick from it, they said, "But look at this: 438 people were shot just in the time that this show went on."
Hmm.
And he goes, "Well, romaine lettuce doesn't have a lobby in Washington."
Good point.
Yeah.
Point
Interesting
taken.
point.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Mark, is there a chance of a Concrete Jungle reunion?
Oh, I don't think so. It would be
uh,
great. I would love it.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
my brother is actually more into playing guitar now than he is into playing drums, and he fiddles around on the bass. But he's an advertising executive, and he does a lot of painting and sketching.
Mhm.
Um, JC, we lost touch with. We we had known about a band that he was in at one time, um, and it was awesome. It was so different. His voice had gotten stronger. His voice had actually gotten stronger after Concrete Jungle's Wear and Tear album, and on the
mm,
demo stuff that we did after that, he was just one take beast in the studio with so much soul.
Wow.
And Chris moved out to Long Island, and he had his own band for a while called Luca Brazzi. And if you're familiar with Luca Brazzi from The Godfather,
Yeah.
and that's a whole other story. But
Yeah. Did they suffer the same fate?
I don't know. I went to see them play a couple times. They were good. They were
Yeah.
good. Straight up rock and roll. Very very like uh, old style, but really good. But we lost
Nice.
touch with him too now. Except
Yeah.
we like each other's posts on Facebook once in a while. That's what it's evolved to.
Crazy how that everybody
Yeah. Well,
goes separate ways.
Yeah,
maybe he'll see this episode and get in touch again.
yeah, that would be great. I do get emails from people from time to time still saying we're still waiting for your world tour. I'm like,
Well, if the rest Here's a message for the rest of the Concrete Jungle guys. If you're watching this, get in touch with Mark and get off your asses and start rocking out again.
Never
All
say
right,
never.
Mark. Yeah, never say never.
Never
Exactly.
say
All
never.
all right, Mark. It's been a real pleasure talking
Yeah,
with you.
pleasure's
I
been mine.
just
Again, thank you so much for reaching out to me. And like I said, 34 years after that album came out, that people still think about us, is it's amazing. I really appreciate it, guys.
no, we appreciate you being here. And
For
yeah,
sure.
we'll check out the Lionhearted stuff. We'll share it and keep the rock and roll playing alive. All
Great.
right, take care, man.
Thank
Have
you.
a good one.
You too.
Bye.